freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 213 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. The theme of our show today is the Canadian Connection, and our guest is Denean Tomlin.
Denean
Tomlin. I knew I was going to mess that up.
All right,
He even rehearsed. Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
Denean. I'm sorry.
Denean is
I'm sorry, Fred. I messed up. I mean,
yeah. And my name is Cheryl. You're the other guy.
Yeah.
Remember? Okay, now we've got all our names straight. Denean is the founder of LadyGuns in Alberta, Canada, an organization that helps women and youth participate and become active in firearms-related sports. She is an outdoor enthusiast that loves hunting, fishing, and shooting. Denean is a firearms instructor, a competitive shooter, a hunting mentor, and most recently, she has been asked to assist the Canadian University Shooting Federation with the development of programs that introduce and encourage female participation in university shooting sports across the country. Welcome to the show, Miss Denean.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me to be representing Canada, I guess, in a way, for today's show. So yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
What happened to Canada? Wasn't that the Wild West at one time, just like it was here?
Well, and I think some parts still might be, just not all parts.
Yeah.
Well, we're sitting here in the studio. I like to tell people, like, orient them where in time we are, because as people listen to these shows, you know, years later, sometimes we'll be talking about things and they're scratching their heads going, what now? We are in the studio on Monday, June 8th, 2020. And this is really the only way that we can see each other is through Zoom. For those of us watching on video, for those listening on audio, we do these Zooms so we can actually see each other, because as Denean was just telling us off air, our borders are closed. Like, I could not go visit Denean if I wanted to from Arizona into Canada.
That is true. That is true. So to give you a sense of where I am, I'm directly north of the state of Montana. And yes, our borders are closed across the country, and we're not allowed to come visit you or us until further notice. So we'll have Zoom.
We have Zoom. And
That's a weird picture, just to think about that you have to stop. You can't go across because...
Yeah, we're really struggling ourselves because we are freedom-minded people, and we have always had the freedom of movement. And now so many things are different. And speaking of which, as soon as I mentioned that you were from Canada, I am sure that people are like, they leaned in. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about what's going on in our northern neighbors' lives. People want to know what is happening with the most recent gun ban in your country. But before we get there, let's talk about where Canada is or was just before the ban. What is the gun culture? What is the recreation, the sport, and activities like in Canada? Like, what do you shoot? Where do you shoot? Just kind of bring folks into your world.
Sure, I would love to, and thank you for asking. It's incredibly different, and I've had such a great opportunity to travel the world to a few different places and a few different gun cultures. And I do get the opportunity to meet with you fine folks at SHOT every year, and the conversations around my gun culture and your gun culture, we're so close, yet we're so far apart. So I'm hoping today I can paint a picture for you about Canada's gun culture and the licensing, the restrictions, the regulations around it. So, so just to give some context here, and I'm going to read for some notes just to make sure I get things correct. Canada's population is about 37.5 million people. So California, the state of California, is 39.5. So all of Canada, population-wise, fits within the state of California. So within that, I know, isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Tons of space, but not a lot of people. And most of the people are obviously on the border or just above the border. So that's where our population is most dense. 2.3 million Canadians hold a valid gun license. And we're going to talk about licensing because you must have one in this country to have the privilege of owning a firearm. So I'm going to refer to something called a PAL, P-A-L, Possession Acquisition License. That is the name of our gun license. And there are about 12.7 million firearms in civilian possession in Canada. So that's roughly 1 firearm for every 3 people in the country. So of that, we have, in 2018, the last report I could find, Canadians spent about $19 billion on fishing, hunting, and sport shooting. And I think that employs about 107 or 8,000 people in the country. So it's a pretty big industry. And so when we get talking about the gun ban, think back to this comment about how it's impacting 107 or 8,000 people, families, employees, etc. We'll get at that later. So in Canada, we have some classifications of guns. We have non-restricted guns. Those are what we call our long guns, our rifles, and our shotguns. Then we have our restricted. That would be like an AR style, a rifle, and a pistol. And then we have the prohibited guns, which cannot be used in Canada. So how do I become a gun owner or a gun user? I have to take a course. It's the PAL course, of course. And it is a 2-day, 1 or 2 day, depending on how much I want to do, because I can get my non-restricted and my restricted gun license at the same time. I have to write an exam. I have to prove that exam by way of show and tell. I have to pass a background check with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I have to pass reference checks. I provide references, and they call them and they interview them. And then if I pass all of that scrutiny, I get something that looks like a driver's license, and that is now my gun license. And it says right on it what classifications and restrictions I have the right to own and use. So another thing that's very interesting that I have learned about Canada versus the US is that, I mean, we're province by province, and so you have state legislation on gun rules and gun laws. We are nationally legislated. So the gun rules and regulations are from one end of the country to the other. So the only thing that's different is in each province, we have a chief firearms officer that is responsible for the ranges and scrutiny within the province, but he or she must also follow the rules of the nationally legislated program. So yet another example of something that might be different is our storage and transportation laws. So, and I remember, Dan, you and I spoke of this in January this year. We have trigger locks on our guns. We have to lock them in a safe or safe storage. And then our ammunition has to be stored separately. So most Americans find that crazy because, of course, I cannot have a loaded gun at any time on my property, and I have to keep my ammunition stored safely away from my firearm where it is locked up with a trigger lock. So we're safe, safe, safe. So on top of that, another difference is ammunition. We have limits on how much ammo we can fit into our magazines. So semi-automatic rifles, excuse me, our high cap mags are 5 rounds, and that's it. So even if the Cheryl, even if the magazine is very large, a 30 round cap mag, you can only get 5. So all of ours are pinned at 5. They may look like yours, but there's a little pin and you can only get 5 rounds in them. And then my high cap 5.
Oh my gosh.
And my high cap mag for my pistol is 10. And that's the maximum I'm allowed to fit into my pistol. So that's the Canadian ammunition limits in our magazines. So,
wow.
I know it's interesting, and I do get that. And think about us poor Canadian competitors that have to come down with those magazine restrictions and try and shoot 3-gun, right? So why do you think I make friends? So I can borrow these mags. So yeah, we can't even buy them in Canada. So it's very restricted. So talking about these restricted firearms and things like 3-gun and IPSC, we can only purchase them for sporting and recreation. So when I put my request into the RCMP for my gun, I cannot list self-defense or protection as a reason for my purchase. Full stop. It is not approved use. There is one caveat. It's based on profession, of course, but I'm just an average gun owner. So I have sporting and recreation. That is it. Those are my options. So obviously that means in Canada, we have no concealed carry. We have no open carry because these pistols can only be used for sport. So the restricted firearms, and a lot of times we talk about things like AR-15s. Obviously there are more than that, but they are not hunting rifles in Canada, and they can only be purchased for sport as well. So they cannot be used in a hunting capacity. So those are kind of the uses and capacities in Canada. And the last thing I want to throw at you, which if your mouth hasn't dropped open yet, Cheryl, but I like this one. You cannot have a criminal record as a licensed firearms owner in Canada. And you are subject to criminal background check every single day, 365 days of the year. It's known as continuous eligibility screening. Obviously, it's an automated process, but they continue to check. We are the safest people in the country by default, I would think, right? So, so those are some of the things that make us different, very, very different. We don't have a Second Amendment, right? Our governance is based on the Magna Carta. And that was established back in somewhere at 1215, I believe it was, and that set the legal system for English Canada. Then we have the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So back somewhere between 12 and 1600, it was stated that the governed could never be disarmed, and that is still in the Act. So we now have the Constitution Act of 1867 and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms from 1982. So all of that combined makes up our rights. And so we have something kind of similar. Our guns fall under our property rights. So property rights and freedoms says that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. So that's as close as we get to your Second Amendment. It's not very close at all, but that's what we get. So
my mouth is agape. I'm just, I really can't imagine that. First of all, you have to ask permission at every angle for every element of the firearm. And then you can't even say out loud that, you know, you might actually need this tool as a self-defense tool, because that's just a bridge too far, apparently.
Yes, ma'am.
That it's just, it's frightening to me, because for some reason, I've watched our recent debate stages for the next presidential election. There are a lot of people in America that feel like, let's just go to this big permissive system. And it's very, lots of emotions for me. It's frustrating. It's bewildering. It's a head scratcher.
Well, I'm shocked that you don't have a right to defend yourself.
Well, we do have a right to defend ourselves. It's just a different type of right and under different circumstances. So, and that was the very same thing you said to me, Dan, in January. And I can tell you, I was asked by many people, and I am constantly asked, by Americans about that. And I can tell you, I was never born with the opportunity to have a concealed carry or open carry option. The only people in my entire life that I've ever seen with a gun on their hip would be policemen and women. And so when I go to other countries that allow that, it's actually a bit alarming for a Canadian, because we're not used to seeing civilians just walking around. So you just have to imagine that we're born and raised differently. And so I'm sure if you asked a number of Canadians, they would want the rights and freedoms that you have, but we've just never been given that. And so we do thoroughly enjoy coming down to the US. I've gone down for competition, I've gone down for hunting, recreation, and of course events in the industry. And I have the opportunity to travel with my firearms down into the US. And your government, the ATF, approves my application every year. And I put it in, and they say, come on down. You're a very scrutinized part of the population in Canada, and we love to have you. So I get the opportunity to express myself in the U.S. with my firearms, but not in Canada. So,
Denean, I have to ask, I mean, this is kind of a scary question, but so if you compare that with the population of California, you said you had about the same amount of people. I have two questions. What's the crime like there with firearms? And what do they do to somebody who does commit a crime with a firearm? Is it?
And those are great questions. And not being in law enforcement or the judicial system, all I can tell you is my experience. Obviously, we are a very large and vast country. So there are a number of crimes that take place in the cities. We have gang crimes in the cities, a lot of handgun-based crimes. Those are illegal guns. I will, when we get into the the gun ban, when we get into that, I actually have some statistics to share with you. But we do have gun crime, absolutely. But the gun crime is not registering by way of licensed gun owners and licensed and registered guns. So the crimes that are taking place are criminals with guns that have been gained illegally, and so the statistics do show that the crimes that are committed are not by people that are licensed gun owners or registered or licensed gun.
But I question that, because the people that are licensed right now wouldn't commit a crime anyway. So the licensing is not effective, because you would not go commit a crime with your firearms if you didn't have to license them, would you?
No, sir, I would not.
So the people that are going to break laws, are going to break laws anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
So all they're doing is restricting you. They're just restricting you, making it harder for you to have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And so our rural gun crime is also, that's more long gun crime, but obviously farmers and people in rural Canada have a lot more, there's a lot more long guns out there because they're either hunting or protecting livestock. So we see a different kind of crime there than we do in the urban centers.
So tell us about your organization, LadyGuns. How did you come to be the founder, and what is your mission?
Okay, thank you for asking, Cheryl. It was an accident. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I started shooting sporting clays. And so a lot of people are familiar with shotgun sports, skeet and trap and sporting. And I got so involved in it that I started a ladies' night. And I became an instructor and a competitor. And I thought, well, who doesn't want to do this? So I just started surrounding myself with women that either were great at it or wanted to be great at it. And we just started these ladies' nights. And then over time, as I added more disciplines and I met more people in other shooting disciplines, it just expanded. And so we actually branded it and launched it officially a year and a half or 2 years ago now. So I would say our mission is to ensure the future of shooting sports in Canada. We like to bring women together. to empower them to try new things in the shooting sports. And we make sure to expand their education and participation, because we know that if women come, women will bring their kids, they'll bring their nieces, their nephews, and then our future of the shooting sports will be bolstered by all of these empowered women. And I love nothing more than to see a woman shoot a gun for the first time, and that huge smile and that feeling of overcoming that beastie machine. It's great. And they come back, and they like to have a group of women. They like to have women instructors. And so that's really what LadyGuns is about. And I like hanging out in the outdoors and doing things. So I just wanted to surround myself and create my own tribe, and like-minded people attract like-minded people. So, so LadyGuns is now running workshops, COVID-19 aside, of course. We have workshops and courses. We run ladies' nights, indoor ranges, outdoor ranges, range days. We do family range days. And for those folks who live in places like Arizona, we had a Frosty Fingers family fun shoot up in Canada just before Christmas in the snow. And the kids were out tobogganing and shooting 22s on the rimfire range. It was great fun. Great fun.
So awesome.
Yeah.
And so
What is a toboggan? I mean,
we were sledding.
and snow too? Snow?
I know we're desert dwellers. We have no clue these words you're using.
Yeah, it's okay. I got to throw in all my Canadiana words, right? So yeah.
For sure. Yes, we have a family that is originally from Canada. My stepmom and 3 of my step siblings, and so we have lots of little in jokes about
Excellent.
all of the Canadian connections there. So about the LadyGuns and the education and that mission, tie that into us with this Canadian University Shooting Federation and University Shooting Sports. So is that actually at university, at a college, or is that an organization that is calling itself a university?
I'm so happy that to share. They're so excited to be coming together, and it's quite a groundswell. So the Canadian University Shooting Federation is actually a shooting federation across Canada, and each of the universities in Canada that want a gun club have put forward applications. So we have universities from coast to coast that have now put gun clubs together, and they have shooting nights, and they have ladies' nights, and they have pint night and pub night and pizza night. And so what happened was we crossed paths actually at an event, and I said, how can I help? And so I started going out and bringing some of the LadyGuns tribe along, and we started doing range officer work with them and helping some of the ladies. Some of these university gals are interested in going into law enforcement or first responder work, and they had never handled firearms. So we were helping bridge the gap, and quite honestly, we were the only girls on the line because all the other range officers are guys. And so it really helped there. And so the director of programming for CUSIF, the Canadian University Shooting Federation, has asked myself and my LadyGuns partner, Miss Casey, to help in put together programming. And so we are now talking about how we can get more women out, how we can introduce more women to different firearms sports. And so we're really in the early stages, but we're so excited to be part of this. And yes, each university in Canada has to go through their own programming to get a gun club, but we're seeing more and more of them every year. So it's quite exciting.
That's so awesome. All right. The moment everybody's been waiting for, right? Let's talk about the most recent gun ban in Canada. What caused it? What has been the reaction, and where is the ban currently? Like, is it in stone? That's it? Is there anything citizens like yourself can do? Go.
All right. Okay. Let's hope this isn't too bumpy of a ride. All right. So on May 1st, so what is that, 5 weeks ago, roughly, May 1st, 2020, Canada's Prime Minister took the podium at one of his COVID-19 morning sessions, and he made an announcement. about a gun ban. Now, we were expecting something was going to happen, but this one and how it happened was kind of out of left field. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys. So he stood up and said that the government, Canada's government, was doing something to reduce gun violence in Canada. Well, who doesn't want that? Everybody wants to reduce gun violence in any country, right? So how they did it is what's interesting. So of course it happened during COVID-19. So because of that, Canada's legislature had been at reduced seating, and they were only dealing with pandemic issues, really. And so to have a gun ban come through was kind of out of left field. And so the other thing you may or may not know is we currently are sitting with a minority government. So we have a minority government, we have a pandemic, and a gun ban comes through. It was done without debate, transparency, or judicial oversight. And they pushed this legislation through using something called an order in council. I will refer to it as the OIC. So the order in council allowed them to bypass parliamentary debate and vote. They used very misleading information and quite inflammatory language to put measures to allow them to seize the legal property of millions of Canadians and render it useless. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how they're planning or what they think they're going to do. And when I say that, that's my hopeful speaking. So what is an OIC? Well, it's something in Canadian law that is generally used for political appointments, simple laws, or in the event of an emergency. I do recall there was an OIC used during World War II. I'm sure there may be one or two more, but it's rarely used. The government also was well aware that the largest petition in Canadian history, so not just gun related, but the largest petition in Canadian history was just about to be introduced into Parliament. And the purpose was to ask the government not to use an order in council, but we, the gun owners and people that were concerned, signed a petition saying, just debate it. Just let's talk about it openly. And they chose to ignore that. So what happened on May 1st? So they banned about 1,500 guns and variants. And this is the kicker. They have added about 250 to 50 plus more since that time, almost secretly, through something called the firearms reference table. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police has been asked to change the classification. So if you remember earlier, we were talking about restricted and non-restricted and now prohibited. The RCMP staff members are being asked to go into the firearms reference table and delete the restriction or the non-restricted category and put prohibited in there. They're not actively sharing that with the public. So we don't even know if we're in compliance right now. These are being kind of sent out to the people that can access the FRT, but John and Jane public cannot. So this is also very concerning to us.
Let me just
as gun owners.
Let me just clarify that. So you told me earlier there were three classifications. There was a non-restricted, a restricted, and a prohibited.
Yes.
You're saying that the word prohibited is replacing the non-restricted?
Yes, ma'am. And it's going all the way over. So they're taking non-restricted firearms from the firearms reference table, and they're making them prohibited. And I'm going to share with you based on what that they're making those determinations.
Oh,
and
yes,
holy is right. So, or in your case, oh my dots, not stars, right?
Yes. Yeah, so, there you go. Oh my polka dot.
All right. So I'm going to quote the Prime Minister as to what he said on May 1st. He stated, "These weapons were designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to kill the largest amount of people in the shortest amount of time." He said there is no use and no place for such weapons in Canada, and effective immediately, it is no longer permitted to buy, sell, transport, import, or use military-grade assault weapons in this country. He further announced that there would be a 2-year amnesty for gun owners, and then he made a promise to legislate fair compensation on a gun buyback. You can't buy back something you didn't own in the first place. So you're going to use my taxpayer dollars to buy my property from me because you told me that you could do it. So this is a problem. And like I said, I want to repeat that again. We couldn't do do the following: buy, sell, transport, import, or use military-grade assault weapons. And that's important because there is no legal definition of assault rifle in Canada. So the firearms covered by this ban, to your point, Cheryl, are classified as non-restricted and restricted. So they're not classified as weapons under our Firearms Act at all. So the government deliberately misstated that in this ban. So what is an assault firearm? Because when you use the terminology with the average public, of course, nobody wants military grade assault weapons just, you know, in people's gun safes. So what is an assault firearm? Well, we say it is select fire or sustained rapid fire capability. Anybody would say that's a full auto. So they've been prohibited in Canada since 1977. So we don't even have them. So
right.
They're basically in effect banning something that they already banned in 1977. So and then further to that, to the reason that we currently have firearms, we've talked about that, hunting and recreation and sport. Our government made it clear that the firearms that they are banning have, the ones they chose, they have no hunting or sporting purpose. So the ones they selected, they feel that they have no hunting or sporting purpose. But then not moments later, he said that there are a select group of people, First Nations people were exempt from the legislation because the exception was that they could use them for hunting purposes. So they contradicted themselves and said, there's an exempt group of gun owners that we will allow to use the prohibited guns for hunting purposes, but they're not meant for hunting or sporting purposes. Are you confused? So
I'm always confused when I hear people that are anti-freedom, anti-gun, try to wrap their worldview around the tools and the use of the tools and the people that own the tools, because it never makes sense. The logic train is constantly jumping off the tracks. And, you know, that is why our founders in our Constitution, the only place they use these words is in the Second Amendment, which pertains to the right to keep and bear arms. And they said, shall not be infringed. Just period. No asterisks, you know, unless somebody misuses their rights or does something horrible with the gun. Like, unless you elect somebody that has zero understanding of what these tools are. Like, it's a gun rights for dummies clause. Just back away. This is not the place for you, is what that says. And I am heartsick at what your nation is going through with this. What opportunities do you even have to push back on this backroom, backdoor, dead of night kind of dishonest dealing?
Well, there are a number of things that are being done. And I would say most importantly, and I know this echoes with you, is educate. Yes. Educate. And because it's easy to get people to agree to something if you give them information, and that information can be biased, it can be truthful, it can be fact-based, but the important thing is to let grown-up adult people make decisions based on real facts. And I think in Canada, just like any other country, if you're not involved in gun sports or understand firearms and the use and the conditions that we are already under to be safe gun-owning Canadians, it's pretty easy to sway people as to what they think about the gun industry. And I've seen some interviews that have taken place on busy street corners in major cities, major urban centers in Canada, and it is alarming to hear what people think they know about firearms. And to your point about decisions and what we're going through in Canada, I want to share with you how our government came to determine these 1,500 guns and variants, because there were a couple of decision frameworks put around it. Number one was it used in a mass shooting in Canada? Number 2 was it used in a mass shooting in the US? And number 3, and don't laugh, you guys, is does it look scary?
No. They
So-
wrote that down?
So,
oh, come on.
so not one single firearm on this list that is banned is based on functionality or how it operates, like fact versus
Right.
fiction, I guess. So
That's the education thing. Scary.
it is the education thing. It absolutely is.
And I have to interrupt just one second, please.
Please.
They said education, but their government is saying AR, assault rifle. They're saying military grade.
Now, wait, don't say AR assault rifle.
That's what I'm saying. They
Yes,
want that.
okay.
It's
Yes.
Armalite. It's not
It
assault
is
rifle.
Armalite. We know that.
Okay.
government-
All right. I'm
The
just
government
clarifying.
is scaring people into saying military grade
Mm-hmm.
firearms. Well, a Colt 1911 is a military grade firearm. It's a 6-shot or 7-shot 45 pistol. They're scaring by using these words like military grade and assault
Yes.
rifle to de-educate the people. And so, I mean,
Yes.
you made a comment, who wants people to have a military grade gun in their safe? And I know you're pro gun 100%, but people think that a military grade gun is evil and bad and that it's going to come out of the safe and shoot you on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. You can do, I don't want to say it, but a military
You
grade
made your
gun
point.
and a civilian grade gun, the only difference is one is maybe full auto, but they can look the same. That scary thing scares me because you can make a gun look scary. They do it in movies all the time. They take a
Right.
regular gun and they put all this stuff on it and make it look like scary. Star Wars did it. Star Wars
Yeah.
is a regular broom handle pistol. They make it look like some kind of assault gun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I had to interrupt that.
No,
but
no, you're
please.
absolutely right. I went out and bought one of those scary looking guns. And, I had this great AR. I put a beautiful scope on it. I got a sling on it and, my high cap 5-round mag. And,
Stop it.
I know.
Not say that all in one sentence. My
Exactly.
high cap 5
5 round, 5 round.
And then my mother said, "Oh my gosh, that's so scary looking." And so then I handed her my 7mm.08 that I hunt big game with. And I said, "This is actually more deadly than this, which is just a .223. It's a sporting rifle."
Right.
And it's designed to be light and it's designed to be easy to manipulate in a sporting context. And so that's all it's for. And to your point, Dan, if the military actually had to use these in the context of which they're being, sold to people as military, they wouldn't want them anyway, because
Right.
these are just modern sporting rifles. That's all
Right.
they are. So it's interesting, and we do have a few additional pieces for the gun ban info for you guys, because those restrictions weren't good enough. There are more. They put some restrictions on energy and bore diameter. So anything that has a 20mm bore plus bore diameter, or a muzzle energy greater than 10,000 joules. And so when you look at the list, and of course, again, my opinion, I think they added grenade and rocket launchers to the list to make non-suspecting people go, "Oh my God, thank goodness they've banned those." They weren't part of, the firearms industry anyway. But what happened was, I believe they unintentionally, and with those classifications, they included 10 and 12 gauge shotguns. So all of a sudden, and I'm not going to get into where you measure bore diameter, because that's a whole other debate amongst gun people. But in the case of the OIC, if you take a modern shotgun and you remove the choke at the threading, if you do a measurement, it slightly exceeds 20 millimeters on many of them. And so what happened was, it was a huge jolt to the hunting community that hunt birds and the sport shooting trap skeet shooters, because obviously many of them use 12 gauge modern shotguns. And so then when that came to bear, there were tweets going out from government representatives that said, "Oh, we didn't mean that." We didn't mean that. So I don't know where you take a tweet if you have to go to court, but apparently that's what you're to use. So,
Well, they got
so yes,
confused.
it is very
They got-
confusing and very
sorry,
unclear.
Yeah, they got confused with, I think the United States has anything over 50, which is half inch, like a 50 caliber, has
Right.
to be a destructive device, but they made that were exception to shotguns. And so what they're trying to do,
Yeah, it was unintentional. So now, remember I told you there was about 250 guns that have, through the firearms table, so there are shotguns now on that list. So if we go back to the purpose and the intent, and then you take the list of guns, they actually, they don't line up, because that test doesn't work. So so yes, unfortunately, it is confusing. It is unclear. It has left us completely up in the air. I feel absolutely terrible. As a gun owner, you know, some of my things are sitting in the safe and they may never see the light of day again. But as an industry, I mean, I don't have to ask, you know, you guys, gun store owners, people that buy and sell firearms, they have things that were non-restricted and they're now prohibited. They have different storage requirements. They had customers that had ordered things that were in transit and couldn't necessarily conclude the transaction. It caused a ton of concern, and it is still, we are still there. We are still at that place right now. And so, I mean, you asked what's being done. Currently, there are 5 cases that are filed against the federal government, fighting the OIC, and those 5 different groups or individuals got together and made sure that 5 different angles were being approached on that. So we have gun lobby groups, industry made up of gun ranges and stores and some manufacturers, and we even have individuals that are taking their cases to federal court to have this gun ban either overturned. I know there's been a request for it to be stayed, grandfathering clauses for those of us who are legal gun owners that had those firearms so that we can use them, but at least for the interim not to sell anymore. It is an absolute, can I say shit show? I think I just did. It is.
It applies here, so we're gonna allow it. Yeah.
It's crazy. So that we don't know what the resolution will be. We do know that they put a 2-year amnesty on it, and we do know we have a minority government, and we do have a pandemic, and we do not know how long this is going to take. And of course, we don't know what the end result is going to be.
wow.
So that's where we're at right now.
What scares me is if I live there, or I'm scared for you guys, is tomorrow he could wake up, or the prime minister could wake up and say, maybe we should just put them all on the list of prohibitive. I mean, if he can do that, why can't he do that?
Well, and that is, you know, what people are questioning, Dan. I mean, that sounds like a bit of a dictatorial, whatever that word is.
Dictatorial, yes.
Sure, that's it. She said it better than me. Move, and that is not Canada. And so, you know, we are coming at it from all angles. Of course, a ton of petitions have popped up, and we can continue to educate. We can continue to open the eyes of people that aren't perhaps in the mainstream firearms community, so that they understand that there already are restrictions, there already are regulations. We can't use those scary guns anywhere but the gun range. I cannot transport them openly. There's all of those things. And in fact, if you take a look at how they passed the order in council, it has been questioned by experts in the field as to whether that was actually the process was followed. And so there is a lot of question as to whether it was done properly. And so I guess we're going to see that in the end as well, because if they didn't follow the process to put the order in council in place, then perhaps we have grounds with that alone, but we will see.
Well, and I just want to address my United States listeners, that if any of you are sitting there going, oh, tut, tut, poor Canada, you know, they've just kind of, you know, fallen off the wayside here. We have right now 2 bills that are just waiting for an opportunity for the people that wrote them. And, I hate to be political. I hate to do it, but because the Second Amendment is not political, but to a person, this HR 5717 in the House and the Senate Bill 3254, that one was authored by Elizabeth Warren, who was just running for the highest office in the land. These are written by Democrats. They are co-authored by Democrats. They are co-sponsored by Democrats. And the minute that they get a chance by some, horrible national event, like what happened in Canada, which is what triggered all of this stuff that your Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on May 1st, 2020, the minute they get the chance, the people that wrote these, all those guns are listed by maker, by model number. So we're going to be in the exact same boat as our friend Denean Tomlin and all of her Canadian nation mates are in. And so none of us get to sit back and just kind of, cluck our tongues and think, oh, well, if they had just had the foresight to have a Second Amendment or something, because we do have the Second Amendment and it's constantly under attack. So either side of the border, these are things that we have to be concerned about. And I 100% agree with what you said, Denean, that it is all about education, because if people don't know, they can't care. If they don't care, then any politician, any elected official can just roll out their dictatorial statements. And what are we supposed? Okay, we just do the little bobblehead thing because we don't know and we don't care. So I really hope that you guys up there in Canada and us guys down here in the United States can put the line back where it should be, and that is on freedom and personal responsibility, and not these arbitrary. I mean, here in Arizona, here in America, because it's scary looking, it's there, it's in the conversation, but as far as I know, it's not actually been written down, right? And the way that you're saying. So it's the same issues, just on different sides of the border. Yeah. And your guy Trudeau, he just took a huge leap that I know there are people here in the United States, they want that opportunity to take that leap and just say, because I said so, that's why. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I'll tell you, you mentioned the active shooter event that took place in Nova Scotia, that took place merely weeks before the gun ban was announced, and through the work of the RCMP on the investigation since that time, it has been determined that all ALL, underlined, big caps, all the firearms were illegally gained. None of them were legally owned firearms. And so, of course, one was taken from the RCMP member when she was killed at the hands of the gunman, and all the rest were illegally purchased or gotten or gained from him. And so I underline that because if we're trying to stop horrible things happening, it's the horrible people. It's not the good people that are doing good things and following all the rules and getting all the licenses and doing, in our case, storage and all of those things. It's bad people will continue to do bad things. And so if we don't educate people as to what's in front of them, then they'll just make these sweeping decisions based on what they do have for information. So
we need to do a 10-hour show with you.
We do. We are definitely going to have to bring you back on. But for now, we do have to wrap up. Man, thank you so much for all of that amazing information. Thank you for what you are doing on the other side of our northern border, your southern border. And I love that, you know, when we met in Las Vegas, we were surrounded by a bunch of my fellow DC Project ladies, and our hashtag is Teal for 2A. And look what you're wearing today.
Yes, I tried to get the t-shirt, Cheryl, but I wasn't in the right place at the right time at SHOT Show. So I thought today I wanted to support you and Diana and all the hard work that you guys have been doing. I think it's an amazing show of leadership, and I truly feel that if women can start educating and leading the way and showing that it's not a testosterone-filled environment, that it actually is just, you know, good average people that are doing great things, and I think women's leadership can make a difference. So I look to you guys, and I hope that we can see something like that happening in Canada sometime soon as well.
Absolutely. Well, with women like you up there doing the work you're doing, I have high hopes that you're in very good hands up there in Canada.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Just need
Very
to clone,
kind.
we need to clone about 50 of you, and maybe then you can have enough influence in Canada to stop that nonsense.
For sure.
Yeah, well, hopefully, you know, it's just you got to step up, you got to be heard, you got to be seen, you got to lead with action, and I always say to the girls when we're on the firing line, you got to see it to be it. So it's time for women to get out and show the way, and maybe that'll make a difference. So thank you guys for your kind words. I do appreciate it. It is always a pleasure to see you every year at SHOT, and I hope for that for all of us for 2021, and who knows, maybe we'll see each other at another industry event sometime soon when they open the border and let me fly to come and see you.
For sure. And how do people follow you? How do they learn more about what you're doing in LadyGuns?
LadyGuns has a website. We're ladyguns.ca, and so you can see some of the activities we have going on, some of the events there, and of course our social media feeds to that. So if you can't find me on Instagram or Facebook, you can always find me there. But on Instagram, I am LadyGunYYC. That's our airport code here in Calgary. So LadyGunYYC on Instagram, and LadyGuns on Facebook. So we like to tag everything with hashtag LadyGunsTribe, and we like to build our tribe. And I would love to unite women on both sides of the border to become part of the LadyGuns tribe, because we all actually are in this for the same reasons, I believe. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank
So
you
that's where
again.
you'll find me.
Thank you again so much. We will definitely check it back in with you soon.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day. Thanks for the invitation. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Wow. I didn't know that Canada was that bad. I mean, they have a ruler. They have a dictatorship.
Yeah, I don't think many Canadians knew that they were that bad, that they had a ruler and a dictatorship until it happened. And that's the thing, is that we have wherever we live, we have to be more proactive in how we hire people with our votes to be our representatives, because, you know, just because somebody looks good or talks a good game, we have to know more about you know, how they've maybe previously voted, who they previously supported in other elections. There are tells. There's always a tell.
Sure.
And we have to be more involved and more engaged.
You know, and a lot of people from Canada moved to the United States.
They do.
And so her teaching them in Canada how to act, when they come here, they won't try to change our world. So we need to support her.
Absolutely. All right. We have got to run out of here. So time to go. We ran really long with Miss Denean. We had questions for her that we didn't even get to. But thank you so much to our awesome listeners. You are everything, whether you're watching on YouTube or GunStreamer, or whether you're listening on GunFreedomRadio.com. You can click the demand tab, the on-demand tab, and binge listen to your heart's content. Click the guest tab and see videos and photographs and links to all of our guests we've ever had. It's a great resource. And we don't hate it when you spend time there, to be honest with you. But thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our awesome guest today, our Canadian connection, Miss Denean Tomlin of LadyGuns. And until next time, pray for our nation. pray for our nation. If I whisper it, maybe people will lean in and hear it. Pray for our leaders.
Pray for our world.
Pray for our world, for
Yes,
sure.
yeah. And so the leaders, okay. All right. We've got to do something.
Even
Okay.
the ones you don't
All
like,
right. Okay.
especially.
Okay. Don't make
ones
me
you don't
change my
like.
mind. Go.
Have a great week. Be good to each other.
Bye.
And God bless.